I'm alive. I am actually here. I may sound a little strange. Ooh. Hello, Black Ice. Thank you for the raid. And hello, people. I think everything is working. Can you tell? It's been a while since I have been. I know I've been ill. And I know I've been ill at a weird time from the point of view of dealing with expansions. Obviously, or we've just had all of the new stuff hit for the next release, which is very exciting, and I want to take some time to talk about. First of all, thank you for all bearing with me while I have not been well. As you can tell, I am somewhat more human now and able to actually talk, which helps, albeit slightly differently than usually. So, before I overly get into this, obviously shout out in chat if you've got any thoughts or questions too. If people are around, it's always good to have interaction, and I know this is an odd time for streaming, but it's the time I happen to have free. Before I dig into it too much, I will say this: go check out J King's latest video. I will grab the link momentarily. You should definitely go watch it. He's done, as usual, an excellent job of breaking down things in a great deal of detail, and having been around a lot longer than me, there is a certain degree to which I would say go watch that. Also, limited talking means I'm probably not going to go into as much detail as he did. However, I am going to have a quick look at what we have seen. So if we go this way, I do this, we should arrive. Well, someone's messed with my settings. That's not fun. Huh. Me? Nope, don't want that. This is interesting. Can we use this one? I think we can. This is fun because someone's played around. Yes, there we go. Much better. So, this is the reveal. Usual preamble, because this will go up on YouTube as well. I am a Kards Content Creator. I am supported by 1939 Games, but I'm not paid by, endorsed by, or otherwise remitted by them to promote their material. I just happen to really enjoy the game. And as a result, I like to try and keep on top of things. So let's talk about Covert Operations and the new release, because we can. So we've got the reserve pool reveal, which we'll get to in a minute, but let's start with the main thing in Covert Operations, which is that obviously we are seeing two new mechanics in the game. Now, my design brain is always turned on as soon as I see new mechanics coming into a game. And we shall have to have a look at these and see how they go. And I'm going to break them down a bit in a minute, once I've replied to this message. Okay. you're gone. If you are the person who just posted and you want to know why you've been banned, if you want to contact me for actual commercial promotion, contact me through actual means. Don't spam my chat. Right. So let's talk about. Hey, Fun Squirty, how you doing? Let's look at the two new mechanics. Covert. Units with Covert are deployed face down on the battlefield, cannot be affected by orders, countermeasures, or unit abilities, operate for 1 credit, and they are revealed on attack or when attacked. This is interesting. This is cool design, Space. I promise I am. I'm being well behaved. As you can tell, breathing's been a thing. I am much better than I was. We are... Interesting is the word I would use to go with Covert as a mechanic. I have a feeling this could be very fun design space. But it will depend on the cards that we see, and scroll down and see about stuff like that in a minute. But I quite like the idea. I think the idea of having concealed information is always going to appeal to me. Those of you who follow my game theory stuff will know that I love a bit of game theory, and that means I'm always pro concealed information, because I think it adds a different dynamic to the game. We'll see how it goes. I think this is one of those mechanics that I don't think is going to have an immediate impact. I don't think there are going to be that many cards doing it. I think it's going to be a slow burner. Develop. Now, I don't know, because of my intrinsic thing about randomness, how I feel about this. I'm going to wait and see. But this mechanic is going to be very dependent on what this limited pool of options actually is. Hey, Enrico. Yeah, I'm only going to do some very brief. I'm probably only going to be like half an hour, 40 minutes. I'm just going to do my brief thoughts on it. As I say, if you look up the top, I posted the link to J King's latest video, which has done a really good job with the reserves list. I will take a look at it in a minute. But as you can tell, limited talking. So, it's going to be interesting. New tactics, yada yada yada. Right, let's get down to the interesting bit. So, new cards, or at least card reveals. Commando Raid. I love this. I'm not going to lie. Those of you who have seen me in my more chill-out modes on stream and playing friendlies against other players at certain levels and stuff will realise I really love Commandos. I just think they're fun. I like building engines, I like working on triggers, I like that risk-reward thing that you've got, and I kind of agreeing with J King on some of his commentary of this. There is spot removal, but not as much as you'd like around at the minute, and with the removal of supply shortage, low-key, I personally am probably going to be playing a chunk of Commandos, because I think they're fun. I may even attempt to do an entire field marshal run on them. This card is cool. It's a 3-cost order. Pin a unit, add a number 10 commando to your support line. Honestly, it's just great commando synergy. It's adding a number 10 commando, which is the core unit, those of you who don't know about commandos, which is any time you give an order, it deals damage to a random enemy. And it's pinning. It's right on par for me with the pin and gain some HQ defense. Limited, I think it's the right rarity for this, being able to only play 3 of them in a deck. I think it's going to be an absolute Commandos staple, and I like it. I like the cost. I'm quite happy with that. Baker Street Irregulars. So, this is really interesting. So, you play Baker Street Irregulars, you develop a special force unit. You control a commando unit, you also develop a British Order. Now, this is where the develop mechanic is going to start to fascinate when it comes to red. what they develop into would get really powerful. So, assume you've got a commandos unit on the board, maybe a couple. You pay a credit. You pull a special force unit, whatever we are going to define that as, and then it develops. So you're developing that special force unit into something presumably better, a la the earning spoilers research cards. And then, if you control commandos, you're also going to develop, same deal, order. This has some concerns for me, depending on how powerful the develop card, because I'm very aware of how out of hand this sort of thing can get if it's not carefully balanced. But I'm excited enough to be interested to see how it goes. HMS Talbot, new elite British countermeasure. One cost countermeasure, if your HQ is about to take damage, gains +6 defense first. Is that right? It'll probably see some play. I don't actually know how much it'll see play because it's a one-of, is my thing, and as a countermeasure, like, it's a great one-cost countermeasure, but single inclusion, probably worth it, we'll see. Right, on to Germany now. So this is Hello Countermeasures, which you will note, and I certainly have, seem to be a thing, that are also going to be focused on in the new expansion. Sturm Brigade Rodus. Now, this is a 7 cost. 7/7 infantry. With 1 op cost. Which, in and of itself, alright, doesn't have blitz, but it doesn't suck. It's a strong body. In your hand, this unit costs 2 less each time your countermeasures trigger. So this is very Soviet self-damage, only triggering a different way, in the sense that this is a unit that is just going to get cheaper. Now, I personally quite like this. I think going into countermeasures is interesting, because I think countermeasures is quite often an underplayed thing. Yeah, Von Squirty, I totally agree. I think countermeasures seem to be a focus of this expansion, which I personally am quite excited about. Whether the people who have been trying for the big nerf to Britain's stall decks are going to be as excited to see countermeasures heavily focused on is a different question. Because it's going to be a very similar story, because we're going to start to see the potential to play some actually really strong control decks. This is not exactly a win condition, but it's not far off with the right stuff behind it for a Germany control deck. Being able to deploy this for nothing is nothing small. And I will point at the 4 little grey cards at the bottom, which I actually think are really important with this card. The fact that this is a standard is interesting to me. I think this will become a staple card of a new archetype. Whether that archetype will work or not, we'll see. But this gives a beating heart to a strong countermeasures archetype. Foiled plans. Right, countermeasures time. It's another standard card. It is a 1-cost countermeasure. When the enemy gives an order, deal damage to the enemy HQ equal to its cost. This is amazing in a countermeasures deck. This has the potential to be unbelievably strong, because it's cheap and standard and dealing damage. Spoilers, I'll be talking about burn a little bit later, potentially, if I'm around long enough. Let's look at 96. So 96th Infantry. Now, this is an elite. This is a fascinating elite that is either going to find a use case and be really strong, or is going to belong in bicycle spokes, just making some fun noise. So it's a 2-cost, 4/4 blitz, 1-op cost infantry. Sounds pretty strong. The drawback on this card is huge. When you deploy another unit, destroy this unit. Now, if this was the kind of card that you could play more than one of in a game, you could see where you're going. Do I want to put a one-of copy of this in my deck to get a 4/4 into the front line, potentially on turn 3, that's then vulnerable to removal and I don't know. I don't know, and I'm interested to see. If this was a special or a limited, I would probably be looking at it differently. But as an elite, I personally don't see it, but we'll find out. And I'll be fascinated to see what other people have to say about it. Look, Soviet card. This is important because Soviet spoilers have taken a hell of a hit with the rotation and really not gotten a lot back yet. So this is a limited Soviet infantry. It has the Covert. This is our first Covert card. It is deployed face down, as we discussed above, with an operation cost of 1. It is immune to borders and unit effects and buttons, and isn't revealed until either it attacks or is attacked. On reveal, this card adds a T-34 1942 to your support line. As long as it was covert for 3 or more turns. That's the interesting side to this. Covert with a ticking clock. This is a fascinating thing that is going to add an awful lot of cognitive load if it becomes commonly played. Because you're going to have to keep track of these like you would keep track of countermeasures. There are 30 some odd countermeasures in the game, and you can narrow those down, but I have talked before about the fact that you keep track of them. These are going to fall into a very similar category. On the face of it, I quite like this as a limited card. I think it's interesting, but I don't want to comment too much on the covert mechanic until I actually see it in play. Covert Operation. Now, this is an understandable card. So it's Soviet order. Add the top covert unit of your deck to your support line. Now, this is, for those of you who've played Gwent, this is very Gwent. This tutoring specifics. I quite like it. But this is effectively pay, at the moment, all of the covert cards we've seen, I believe, are 3 cost. So this is effectively pay 4 to immediately deploy a 3 cost card to your support line without having had to draw it. We'll see. I see the value of it as long as you find good enough covert cards. The Grumman Goose. The Grumman Goose. I kind of like this. I think it's interesting. So this is again, it's covert, so it deploys. Again, it's 3 cost. It deploys face down. When you reveal this, you have 1 turn during which any time a friendly unit damages the enemy HQ, you draw a card. So, hypothetically, you're going to get this into a covert position. It's an aircraft, so you can attack with it, I assume, at range, by flipping it when it attacks. So you pay 1 to attack, and the rest of your turn, you can proc card draw from attacking. And it's 2/3 fighter for 3? I'm kind of, yeah, it seems solid for a special card. Again, it seems very specific, but the US is never going to object to getting more draw. Bomber Mafia. Let's get past the fact that I love the name. The historian, World War II geek in me loves the idea of this as a name, but this is a 2-cost order. Develop a US bomber, deal 2 damage to all enemies if you have 6 or more unspent credits. So the first part is pay 2 to develop a US bomber. That's probably not going to worth it, but if you have 6 or more unspent credits, you will deal 2 damage to all enemies. This is good AoE. 2 damage to all enemies is not nothing. For 2. So this is going to fit into what I feel, from what I've seen, is going to be the US's new shtick, which is excess credit, like the application of wealth, which, if you know anything about World War II history, actually makes a lot of sense. The idea is that by having and profiting more, the US is going to be able to trigger more interesting effects, leading us to America at war. This, to me, signals a new potential US archetype. Now, that's just me. I'm not an expert. I have no existing pre-information, and any existing pre-information that I might or might not have would be covered by NDAs and all of that gubbins. This is just my thoughts. This is cool. So this gives America a very specific theme. So you pay 3 and gain an extra credit. So far this is like War Machine but worse. However, if you have 2 or more unspent credits at the time that you play the card, note unspent, it doesn't spend them. But this is a timing thing again. Assuming this works the way I intend it to, if I have like 5 credits and I play this, I still have 2 credits to spend at the end of it. But the point is, it procs card draw and gains an extra credit slot, which then presumably means you get more and more unspent credits. Fascinating. Right, Japan. 5th Regiment. When you lose, so it's 4 cost, 0 op cost, 4/4 infantry. So far, so solid but not spectacular. Then, when you lose a credit slot, this unit gains +2/+2 on the battlefield, or -2 cost if in hand. Now this is cool, because it cuts 2 different directions. I think, again, we're about to see an interesting Pacific theatre dichotomy. You were going to see the US gaining from excess credit access, whilst Japan is going to start losing credits to gain benefits, which I think is fascinating. I've talked before about the fact that I like using like HQ defense and credits and other things as resources. This is 100% that. Which of these 2 bonuses is better? I think that's very interesting, because they're more balanced than I thought they would be. I mean, +2/+2 on the battlefield is very strong, though. Yes, every time. So, assuming that you can find a standard card that loses you 1 credit slot and proc it twice, this would become an 8/8. Or play for free. As my understanding of the mechanic, I have not seen it in play. I have not seen any previews, I've not been sent any spoilers, I have no pre-access, but yes, my understanding of this is that every time you lose a credit slot, it will get +2/+2 if it's on the battlefield, or -2 cost if in hand. It could be amazing. I'm deeply glad it doesn't have Blitz. Speaking of things to go with this, air, land, and sea. So now we start to see how this is going to work. Air, land, and sea is limited, so you're only going to be able to play 3 of them. Cost 1, it's an order. Develop a card in your deck. Specific? We'll find out. I would like some clarity on whether that's a random card or you choose. You choose. That could be very slow in this interface. I have to assume that it's going to be random because there is not enough time in the turn window for you to look at every card in your deck and choose which one you want to develop. So I'm going to assume that this is only going to be a random card randomly. However, the key is pay 1, develop a card, lose a credit slot, which to the previous card. You see how the archetype could theoretically work. Now, if you're playing Japan as an aggro nation, and you probably are, you're going to get that much. 1 credit slot here and there, timed well. Like the idea of spending my credit advantage as a resource to get heavy boosts. I like it. Hey, Neil, how you doing? Nice to have you along. I love the concept of this. I'm not going to say I love the archetype or anything, because I've not played it and I've not seen it, but I personally like the design space this opens up. But there are people who aren't going to love it, because it's a very thinky design space, very thinky play space, because you are having to work out the progressive value of 1 credit slot now and say over the next 2 turns versus the buff that you could get from it. So my understanding of develop, as limited as it is at the minute, is that you select card to develop. That card will develop into one of 3 cards selected from a specific pool of cards. Until we see the pool and what it can develop into, I'm not sure. And I was just pointing out before you arrived that Air, Land and Sea makes me wonder about how this specific card will interact. Because if you read the card text, which Neil will know I am a big fan of, develop a card in your deck. Period. At random, I presume, because otherwise I have my turn timer running while I look at every potential card that could develop in my deck, then select it, then select the thing it's developing into, then potentially play another copy of Air, Land and Sea and do it again. I have to assume that it will select a random card from your deck and develop it. Otherwise, this would be incredibly powerful but very time-consuming. And since we don't know what things can develop into yet, we'll see. I think it's an interesting mechanic. So, going back to the conversation about this new Japan archetype, potentially. So, E13A Jake. If nothing else, I'm happy to see this in the game. I like seeing all the different Japan aircraft being included because they had some fascinating ones through the war. It's a bomber. It's 3 cost, 2 op cost, 2/3. So on the face of it, it's not amazing. But its text is why it's going to potentially be a very strong elite. So when you lose a credit slot, your units get +1/+1. So if we go back up a little to the 5th Regiment, and we have the 5th Regiment and Jake, and then play a couple of Air, Land and Sea, this gets +6/+6. That's not nothing. I'm interested. I think it's an interesting direction. Allied Nation time. Hello, France. 51E. Regiment 51E. Limited card. 3 cost, 1 op cost, 2/3 infantry. Deployment. Choose one. I like choose one. Gain +3 attack and blitz, or +3 defense and guard. So this is either a 3 cost, 1 op cost, so you're going to want to play it on turn 4. Turn 4 will be relevant. 5-3 blitz, or a turn 3 2/6 guard. I like this card. I like this card because this card is just generically decent. It will fit into a lot of different things. Particularly think this might be interesting in Britain, France. I had some Britain, France ideas in mind. I think this could add a very different dimension to that particular combination. Right. It's the Lublin. Lublin R8. Or the R. So it's the Lublin R13, I should say. Learn to read Roman numerals. Or at least to be awake. Now this is interesting, because this is another card that plays into the new covert mechanic, but also plays into Poland in particular's intel thing. I like that because I think intel is, I personally think, if intel could be just strengthened a little bit, intel could be very, very good. So, Lublin R13 gives us a 3 cost, 1 op cost, 2/3 fighter, which doesn't suck. It's limited, which is fine. Cards you play have Intel 1. So every card I play while this is on the board lets me see a card in my opponent's deck, and also procs legions. Just gonna say that. Deployment. Reveal target covert unit. Earlier on, I was talking about the fact that I like the idea of including more concealed information. I also like the fact that they're including some interaction with that. I hope we're going to see enough of these cards to make it interesting, because I find that new mechanic fascinating. Right. That takes us to the end of preview cards, which I think are interesting. So this one, I will say again, go watch Jaking. He's done nearly 3 hours, I want to say? Yeah, just under 3 hours on the reserve pool reveal. I'm not going to do nearly 3 hours. I'm going to come even close. Would be a very bad idea, and he's done an excellent job. I'm going to skip. If you don't know how reserve works and all of that, that's fine. Instead of going overly card by card and thing by thing, I'm going to give my just general views on the reserve pool, and also be interested to see what people think. From the top, let's deal with the thing that everybody's going to be asking about, because everybody's going to be asking about it, and everybody's bonkers about it in one direction or the other on the Discord, which is cards that are changing, in particular from Britain. Commonwealth is gone into the reserve. I will say it, J. King has said it, a million other people will say it. Relax, it'll come back. I just think people want a break from it. And I think, as a designer, my instinct is that 1939 want to try and explore some different avenues with Britain, which I'm fascinated by, because I'm not sure where they're going to go, because a lot of what we've seen, beyond the fact that Commandos could be a lot of fun, has become apparent. I'm going to miss it, because I like the old WinCon. I got some really hard work to do after this release. I have a feeling I'm going to have to do complete new player experience redesigns, which will be fun, actually, but there's some big changes here. But anyway, we have a long list of cards which are being changed. But the Commonwealth is obviously one that's being talked about. Obviously, the other one that's being talked about is Monsoon Rot and Supply Shortage. I'm not sad to see them go. I did use them. I do understand why they were used tools. I also understand why they're gone. Monsoon Rot in particular, I am very happy to see go, because Monsoon Rot was insanely strong. Supply Shortage, I don't think was as broken as people think it was, but I understand why people wanted to see it go, and it's fine. It's 1939 appear to be listening to what their player base are saying. I am interested to see what new stuff we see from Britain to give them some good, solid alt win cons and stuff like that. But in the end, I think it was predictable that it was going to go. I'm going to hop to my main screen. Like a whole 5 of you watching me at this time, which is cool in and of itself. I'm gonna crack on my bits just in case there's anything on here. Oh, I need to make sure I include reserved cards in case we get to them. So, why are you not showing me the Ardo? Oh, it's because I have spelt the Arado incorrectly. That's why it's not showing it to you, Bear, because you can't spell. So, this is arriving back. This is kind of cool. I'm gonna pop a couple of examples here. What I'm actually gonna focus on is moving to the reserves. But this is I like the fact that we've got a few coming back. I just realised I would be at this forever if I did this. I might have to do a video on my opinions, but then do I really want to cover something that's already been done? So let's have a look at things that I think are big changes. Here's one that I think most people will recognise as being pretty big. We are saying goodbye to the 5th Rangers for a while. Now, this is a lot larger than it looks. Because 5th Rangers is an interesting card to find an alternative to. I know this because I've been thinking about my recommendations for US decks right now. 5th Rangers going is going to mean that Frontline is going to have to do some rethinking. We are seeing quite a few interesting tools going from Frontline. The other one that we're obviously seeing is Red Devils. Now, I can't say I'm overly shocked. This card is insanely strong and has been for some considerable time. It is at times too strong. I think rotating it out for a while will just change up the way that Brits look. US looks at its core deck archetype. Is Frontline going to be the core US deck archetype? And if it is, will it look the same? I think it's interesting. That is, for me, a theme as I look down this list of cards that are being rotated. And rather than going through them all at the same time, I'm not going to redo someone else's work. There's no need. But the more I look at this, the more I see the potential for this to be a very kind of there's some big meta shifts going here. A lot of the super staple cards that have been part of decks that we've seen a lot, back in California, also going from US, for example. We've seen Burst of Fire go from Japan, which is going to hit some OTK decks quite strongly. War Production's gone. Obviously, that's going to hit High Roll quite hard. What else on this list leaps out to me as having particular effect? The Trop going actually hits Germany mid-range, especially early on in the game. No Surrender going, obviously, is going to hit Soviet tokens. Obviously, we've talked already about Monsoon Rot, supply shortage. The Commonwealth going is hitting Britain in a very particular way. Confusion is going, which is also interesting to me. Southern Plan has gone, credit denial, hunting away. These are, Last Rites has gone. I personally will not see the things like Last Rites and Pika. I know some people enjoy them. I personally didn't, but there you go. Daring Strike's gone. Daring Strike gone. Now, why is this relevant? Why am I calling out Daring Strike? This goes to a very interesting archetype. This is particularly interesting because this is insanely powerful. This card is one of the reasons that Exile Air worked as well as it did and is working as well as it does. 2 exile units on the board and you can deal 2 damage to any target 4 times in a game for free. Insane. Von Squirty, yes, no surrender onto Baranovici is a hit. I think, however, with the correction to Baranovici, I'm not going to call it a buff or a change, they needed to do something before it got out of it. I don't know whether this was the right thing. I'm not going to lie, I truly don't know whether it was the right thing. Because I'm not sure how well Tokens is going to survive post the removal of no surrender. Not to say it's not good. Still, I think it's still got some value. But I do wonder if it's just going to be too slow. Obviously, you can still, like, hey, Nero. Obviously, you can still play the give all the light infantry in your hand blitz card and go from there. But I do think it's a hard hit. It's interesting. I think we are seeing. So I would trying to talk about things that aren't going to be talked about by other people. People seem to like it when I get developer speaky. So in designer speak, I would call this a pivot point, looking at the turning list as well as the previewing the new mechanics. This feels like pivoting the game. It is indeed. I'm going to open mine when I end this stream. I've not actually opened my crate yet. When I end this stream, I'm going to end it by opening the crate, because I never do that. It's going to be exciting. So, in answer to Von Squirty, what was your comment? I am trying to get my head around the logic of hitting a deck type tokens that was never tier 1, never competitive in ladder. Why even bother? I think because it was edging very close to becoming tier 1. I don't think people had fully realised tokens' potential for a number of reasons, some of which are personal. I personally do not think enough people were playing No Retreat in their tokens deck. I will say this endlessly. If you've got 2 or 3 light infantry on the board, drop a Baranovici, and then No Retreat it for free, you create an immense problem for your opponent. So I think tokens was potentially interesting. It is also, yep, Nero makes a fair point, which is the next one I'll get on to, which is we've not seen. Open declaration. I am supported. I would love to be able to see previews and stuff, and I'm excited for the potential that at some point I might be able to, but I have seen nothing more than anybody else has. And I'm fascinated. In particular, I'm interested to see what Soviets get, because right now, despite the winnowing sound of lamenting Brits, myself included, the nation that has been hit the hardest collectively with this information so far is Soviets by a distance. And they are the least played competitive nation. So I am fascinated to see what the new Soviet cards are going to look like. I'm very excited by that because it suggests to me, and again, it is solely suggestive, that there are going to be some really interesting Soviet cards. Hey, score! Nice to have. It'll look pretty. So I do think a lot of it is waiting to see what else comes out. I think the other half of this equation is going to be very important. I don't think US Frontline is going anywhere as an archetype. I just think it's going to... I've already talked to Nero quietly in a corner about some card replacements that I've already been looking at without seeing what else comes out. I'm pretty sure Frontline isn't going to die. It's just going to have to adapt the way that it plays. Which I think is fine. I think it could do with being actually softened slightly, because I think it was... I love, by the way, endlessly having a deck that you can recommend to new players and say, the value of having it just that little bit less ubiquitous, which I actually think that removing Red Devils and Fifth Rangers does kind of do. It's not like US decks don't have other cards that they... I think Red Devils is the harder of the two to replace. There are some cards that you can look at that might well do a decent job. No, let's do some spoilers of Bear's thinking, because that's always fun. So I was looking at US infantry a while ago, and I think this is going to see some play in Frontline, at least for a while. Because I think this is a logical, clean replacement for Fifth Rangers until such time as anything new emerges or there's an alteration in the way it works. Because it's still a turn 4 play, it's still a body into the front line. Hey, Smoke. So I agree mathematically, but Callie's much later in the game. The reason that Red Devils needed a shift was that at the moment, if you played Frontline well, you could have a 2/4 a unit in the front line in the first couple of turns that then costs 1 extra credit to interact with. It buys you the time, and that's the difference. Like, mathematically, Callie is technically stronger, but the fact that it doesn't play until turn 6, if you're a sensible human being, makes it much less likely to sea change the game. Whereas Red Devils played well with 164th, it can take you from I'm in a decent position to I'm in a near unremovable position. And that's very, very strong. I'm trying to think how many times I've lost a game when I've been able to pull off that combo, and I think the answer is not very often unless I'm playing someone who's very, very good. I can get, and I will mulligan hard for a Red Devils and a 164th. If I can get that, I'll take a Greyhound and a 164th. But if I can get off the Red Devils 164th combo, generally I think my chances become much, much higher. Kali is good, much stronger at lower levels. Once you get to about rank 2 or 3, I think people become much smarter with moving, removal, and trading, so it becomes less powerful, though more so now than it has been for a long time. And 5th Rangers was, and therefore when it comes back, unless it's significantly changed, will continue to be unbelievably strong because it's just a Swiss Army knife. It's so good. But it's almost the archetypical card of the deck. I think the change to Red Devils rotating out is a smart move to just shift frontline a little bit from being overplayed, especially when you're trying to ladder. It's just that little bit too consistent. But I'm trying not to get overly noodly because I have no desire to bore everyone. Although I'm sure you guys will quite happily tell me if folks will tell me if you get bored. What I will say is that I am interested / nervous for some of the new mechanics. Covert fascinates me because I love concealed information, and I think it's going to make for some interesting tactical stuff. And I also think for those of us, which definitely includes me, who don't mind high cognitive load gameplay, learning covert cards as more of them become available is going to be fast. With regard to the new develop mechanic, however, this is my cynical face. This is a mechanic which on the face of it looks cool, but as a designer makes me twitch because it is the kind of mechanic that it has exponential returns, and that can be hard to balance. Every one of these cards is going to hugely depend on what it can develop into. And I will go back again to my comment on the Air, Land and Sea card. Probably put this back up because Nero, you might have actually missed this. I'm going to quickly look back and we'll come back in a minute, but zip over here because I want to talk about this card again. This is what makes me nervous about this mechanic. So, on the face of it, this card is near impossible to implement well because it says, for 1 cost, develop a card in your deck. Now, develop a card in your deck suggests that you choose the card to develop. So I play this card, I then look at every card in my deck, choose the one that I want to develop, then choose from 3 random options that it can develop into. Then I come back out again, then I play another copy of this, choose another card in my deck. That's going to be nigh impossible it's going to make playing quickly. If the animations are even remotely too slow, it's going to make it a nightmare to play in the time. Or this just develops a random card in your deck, and if it does, I wish they said develops a random card in your deck. So, in answer to Neil's comment, let's go to develop. Develop. Choose one of 3 cards randomly chosen from the specified pool and add it to your hand. This is suggestive of the fact that you can develop any card, which seems bizarre. And we haven't actually seen it. And again, so if we go to Baker Street Irregulars, develop a British Special Forces card. That's one type of card. If you control a commando, also develop a British order. Not a British order that has the develop keyword. I'm interested to see how this is implemented, because you've got two directions you can go with this. One of which is you can only develop cards that have develop on them, or developable, or something. That would seem very unwieldy, because I don't think they're releasing enough cards that that's likely to be the case. But if it is, it would be more manageable. Or there is a specific pool for infantry, orders, artillery, something similar. Hey, Loads of Wars. This is the mechanic that I most want to see more information about. If you're 1939 and you are watching this, please give us a little bit more, because it's very hard to give people advice as to what to think about with this, because this mechanic could be really cool, fun, really overpowered, really underpowered, really annoying, or just terrible. And I can't tell you which yet. I can't, because I don't understand how it works. Also, British Special Force Unit. That's interesting. We're going to need to see what qualifies as a British Special Forces unit. Again, I'm quite excited by the fact that Commandos is getting some help, but because that's an archetype, as many of you know, I really enjoy playing. But the develop mechanic concerns me more than the covert mechanic. The covert mechanic, I think, is just interesting. Develop mechanic, I really... We'll wait and see. I want to see if we see some cards that actually say develop into X, Y, or Z, because so far we're not seeing a lot of stuff like that. Obviously, countermeasures, we'll go back to that as I'm scrolling down, just reminding myself in the summary up. Love this card. Love that this is going to make German countermeasures decks interesting, if not amazing. Because I love the mechanic of this card. This is, for me, the kind of card that I look at and go, I just love the design theory behind this card. It's a standard card. And the reduced cost on countermeasures trigger is just cool. I think it's kind of funky. Day one of the drop, I'm sure 1939 puts sample play examples before too late. I know I need to watch some videos and see what they've already put out, but I am intrigued to see whether they have put out anything that tells us more about the develop keyword. Foiled plans of this. 96th Infantry. Hey, Nero's here, hopefully. Nero, help me out here. Is this just... This is just Shredder, right? This is Bike Spokes or Shredder. It's just not good enough to justify being an elite include. Like, as cool as the idea is. Yeah. It's an early Blitz 4-4, but it's not even a tank. I mean, I suppose it could give you some... I suppose if you're going to go order heavy, but even then, one of these, which is my issue. My issue is not with the design of the card, by the way. My issue is that this card is an elite. Feels like it probably should have been a special. Maybe slightly less powerful than a limited. I look at it and I'm like, I don't see... It's in there with Bolshemjäger. I love the idea, I just doesn't feel worth it. But hey, Soviets getting covert. It's backed up by lots of countermeasures and no need to attacking it. True, and I think that's probably what they're playing to, but my thing is, if you want that to be the heart of the countermeasures deck, or a big part of a countermeasures deck, you need to be able to include more than one of them in your deck. Consistency being the thing. Slightly less powerful special seems... But hey, we'll see. I think it will see play, because I think countermeasures decks will see play. Actually, that's a lie. I know countermeasures decks will see play, because one of the first things I will probably do when the expansion drops, and I get the cards opened up, is I will build a countermeasures deck. Because I'm me. probably just after I'm done tweaking my Commandos deck. Because pew pew engines. Sometimes I'm very easily satisfied. I like Covert. I think it's going to be interesting. I like the new US concept. I like the juxtaposition of the new US credit-based archetype and the Japan credit-based archetype, because I think it is thematically really representative of the Pacific theatre of war and the way that the US leveraged its financial and production advantages. Nope. I mean, I will say that with some certainty. There is no reason to believe that they do. I believe that if you have 5 credits in hand and play this, gain a credit slot, and then spend the remaining 2 credits. There is nothing on there. It doesn't say you lose them. In fact, if you have 6 credits, you can play one of these, play another one of these, and still have a credit spare. Just saying, that is the way that I read them, and I think I'm correct. America is going to do a lot of accelerating. Japan's going to go in the opposite direction, but doing cool stuff. Man, this card could be so strong. Played well, this card could be crazy good. This card, we've discussed earlier. I like Jake. I think Jake's interesting. I love the new the 51A. I adore this card. I think it's a nice flexible card, and I love good flexible cards. I like that we're digging further into the Poland intel job. I really like that, and I think the fact that it directly interacts with covert cards is going to make it interesting. Overall, I am actually more positive than some people might be. So we're going to hop back to my account, because I'm just going to open my crate live, because I haven't opened it yet. So this will upgrade to Elite. Thank you, Battle Pass. Let's see whether we get anything good. Obviously, we get the wild cards. I'm always happy to see. I want to see what actual golds I get. What we got? We've got... I mean, it's pretty, but a little disappointing. It's probably not going to see play. Gold Grenadier Guards. I like it. And there's my cash. So, always nice to do a bit of an opening. Special assignments. I might actually have to see if I can find a way to, use the thing. So, before I become any more excessively out of breath, I'm not dead. I'm back, mostly. I will be back on Saturday to stream, unless something goes very, very wrong. I just wanted to hop on because I know lots of people have been asking me about this stuff, and I kind of wanted to get my hot take opinions out there. If you are watching this back later on and you're wondering whether I've lost my senses, some of them probably, but on the whole, everything that I'm seeing makes me feel more excited than nervous, if that makes sense. There is a degree of nervousness because a lot of things are being moved that have been staples for a while and we've gotten used to. Also, not gonna lie, as a content creator, particularly I don't want to say the content creator, I don't have that much ego, but one of the premier content creators focused on new players, I have a feeling the next couple of months are going to be quite busy for me, because I have a feeling I'm going to have to revisit the new player experience, and I may have to start a whole new account and look at what the new starter decks are going to look like now, and how to evolve them. But it's kind of cool, and I like the fact that we're seeing a change in direction. I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited too. But also, get in touch, give me comments, find me on Discord. You can find me on the main Cards Discord. You can find me on most other people's Discords. At some point, I will almost certainly end up with a Discord of my own. I just need to A, be asked to make one, and B, find some fools that are willing to moderate it for me. Because I'm not intrinsically lazy, but I am ill and progressively have periods I can't do stuff, so I wouldn't be able to handle moderating an entire Discord channel on my own. Just not going to happen. It's been a blast to hang out with you guys for an hour or so. An hour and 9 minutes, in fact. I'm going to rest my voice because I have a whole tabletop RPG to run later on today, which is going to involve talking. Von Squirty, you're a star. You may regret that sentence, but I'll be in touch. We will reconvene at some point. There is more content coming from me. The banks are a little bit diluted now, but they'll be refilling as I get better. I will hopefully see most of you on Saturday. Thank you for those of you who've taken the time out of your day, night, wherever the earth you are. I'm glad I could make an entertaining breakfast. Take care of yourselves, be good humans, and above all,